Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to the main thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. Welcome back to the Main Thing Podcast. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, coming to you today from Parkwood Studios. Today, I'm especially excited to bring you a special overnight air delivery of wisdom. You see, today's special guest is someone who had the honor of flying Air Force One for President George W. Bush. I'm so excited for you to meet in just a few moments, Mike Grenke. Mike is a retired Air Force pilot and lieutenant colonel with 21 years of service. Mike Grenke started out flying the KC-135 in the Air Force and then transitioned into flying the nation's leaders aboard Gulfstream III, IV, and V before finishing his career flying Air Force One for President George W. Bush. Today, Mike is the chief pilot for LAW Aviation, working in a small flight department that flies a Global 6000. He's married to Tammy Grenke and has two daughters, Courtney and Ashley. He's the proud grandfather of Reagan and Cayden. Mike is an outdoor enthusiast who likes biking, hiking, hunting, and fishing. He comes to us today from his home in Ohio. Fasten your safety belt and put your seat in the upright position. Get ready for takeoff. Over the next 9 minutes, you will discover why Mike Grenke is one of the wisest people I know. Mike Grenke, welcome to the Main Thing Podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Skip. I'm glad to be here.
Mike, I want to start in a little bit of an unusual fashion because you have such a tremendous story to share. I just want to go ahead and take care of a bit of housekeeping, which is how we're connected, how we know each other through a fine gentleman named Scott Ryder. Would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about your relationship with Scott?
Sure. Scott and I met, we went to the same church. I didn't know we went to the same church, but I was going through some struggles and the pastor introduced Scott to me. And I thought the Lord had brought him into my life for a certain reason, but it turned out later on, as I got to know him, it was for another reason. He's an incredible athlete, as you know.
Yes.
And we ended up being really good friends, and we actually did a couple big bike rides together.
You said it, inspiration, a great friend. He's a champion for Parkinson's awareness and finding a cure for Parkinson's. And I just have such respect for Scott. Mike, you are one of the wisest people I know, and I don't want to waste too much of our precious 9 minutes of wisdom here. Before we get to the story, Mike, you had the honor and distinction of being an Air Force One pilot. I wondered if you would just kind of start with that story, if you would, as your career in the Air Force, what you did leading up to, and how you became selected to fly for a U.S. president.
Okay, I wanted to be a pilot all my life. Even as a young boy, I tried different academies, and that didn't work out. So I ended up going through ROTC at the University of Maryland. And 5 of us got selected for the same pilot training class back in 1987 to go to Williams Air Force Base in Arizona. And there's 2 things I remember from that experience that vividly stick out in my mind that I remember to this day is when you get there, there's a new class every 6 weeks. They bring you into the base theater, and the graduating class is in the front of the theater, and you're in the back of the theater. And the colonel up front said, "You guys in the back are going to find out it's a long ways from the back of this theater to the front of this theater." And it was. There was 32 of us that started and only 16 of us that graduated.
Wow.
And one of the other things that happened in that journey is when you go to the flight line, you're just starting out flying, and you're getting excited, and everyone's super excited. And the guy stands up there, the guy in charge of evaluation, and he stood up there with these two bags, and he said, "You guys are getting ready to embark on a great adventure, but he said these two bags represent, one's your bag of luck and one's your bag of experience." He goes, "And
Wow.
your bag of luck is full right now. And before your bag of luck runs out, you got to hope your bag of experience has enough in it to get you out of whatever situation flying wise that you find yourself into." And that stuck with me. And
Yeah.
out of pilot training, I got the 135, a KC 135 refueling tanker, which was the absolute last choice I had. I was devastated, did not want to fly it, but things worked out. And I ended up flying those for a while. There was a situation with my wife's father-in-law. He was killed in a home accident, and we were trying to find our way back to Maryland so the mother could live with us. And one of my buddies from pilot training sent me a Christmas card that year saying he was flying these planes out of Andrews, these blue and whites. I'd never even heard of them. And I was like, "You do what?" He goes, "Yeah, you fly these DV, distinguished visitors, all over the place. It's awesome." So I applied for it, got selected, started out flying senators, generals, first ladies, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Treasury, CIA director, FBI director, all those kind of people. And from that pool, a little bit of luck, a little bit of who you know, a little bit of skill, I guess, got selected for the presidential unit. And 2000 and right after 2001, after 9/11. And I actually, the first time I flew on Air Force One was when President Bush went up to New York and stood on the pile in the rubble of 9/11 and said his speech.
Oh, gosh.
Kind of famous.
Yeah.
So
that moment's imprinted in all of our collective memory as Americans. What an honor. Wow.
I'm sitting here in my office right now looking at a picture of it, to be honest, that I got from him. Just it was kind of a crazy realization of like the Lord's providence in your life.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how low I was when I got a tanker. It was the lowest of just not a plane I wanted. And then to finally get this plane, when you're at Andrews, everybody wants to get in the presidential unit. I mean, there's, like 8 guys in there. So, and there's, several squadrons of people flying the other planes. So it was an exciting moment. Then comes the realization, okay, now I got to live up to this and go to training, and ended up flying several planes at one time, a Gulfstream III, a G5, and the 747 at the same time. So it was fun. It was busy. We did a lot of neat things. I went into the Iraq several times with the president. And,
wow.
We flew over Hurricane Katrina after that happened with him in the cockpit. Flew with John Glenn and Neil Armstrong in the cockpit to one of the shuttle funerals, the second shuttle that flew up.
Oh, gosh. Wow, what a distinction. Mike Grenke, what's the main thing you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Skip, the main thing I've learned in my lifetime so far is there are no superheroes.
Oh, wow. There are no superheroes. Mike, would you tell us more about that?
And it kind of stems from the fact of I heard a quote once from Admiral Bull Halsey from World War II, and talking about the men at Iwo Jima, and he said there are no extraordinary men, just extraordinary circumstances that ordinary men are forced to deal with. And it really struck me. We see people like Scott Ryder, for instance, and we think, man, that guy just he's a superhero, but he's not. He's an ordinary guy that was dealt this incredibly unfortunate hand late in life, and he was able to overcome it and thrive with it. And as things transpired in my life, I realized that my father-in-law was killed when their hot water heater exploded in their home, and it was a kind of a brutal way to go. And I said, we ended up moving back to Maryland.
Yeah.
My wife's mom moved in with us. It was awesome. But after like 10 years, she ended up getting stage 3 stomach cancer and had to feed her with an IV around the clock. And it was a 3-year battle. And there's just these things that come through your life, and the journey from the back of that theater to the front of the theater that you seem like you're overwhelmed with. And then you you kind of have to kind of rely on that experience bag. When you're young, it seems like everything's going well, and I guess you feel like you're lucky. But then as you get older, it just, I don't know if it how life works, but it just seems like now that luck starts to run out and things start happening, you have to deal with them. And if you think that you got to be a superhero to deal with them, you really don't. My wife has a rare blood disease, and she would routinely get treatments for it. She would have one. It's called acute intermittent porphyria. She would have an attack. She would go in. She'd get a central line put in, and get a treatment a day. Come home, go back, 5-day treatment, and she'd be fine. And we've been doing this since she was 18. And
Okay.
during the COVID era, she had an attack, and she happened to get COVID at the same time, so they wouldn't let her go in and out. They made her.
Oh my goodness!
They made her be admitted to the hospital, and I wasn't allowed to be with her for the first time. And she's had this disease and probably had 100 treatments. And in the beginning, she was hospitalized quite a bit. When my first daughter was born, she was hospitalized for about 15 months, on and off. So,
oh gosh!
But this is the first time I wasn't able to go with her. COVID rules, So she went in. We kind of just, hugged there at the door because it was like 90-degree heat, and she went in the hospital. And little did I know, they couldn't get a line in her arm like they usually do. And so they tried to put a line in her neck at like 1 a.m, and they ended up putting it in an artery instead of a vein.
No. Oh, Mike. Oh gosh.
She called me the next morning and said, every time they put medicine through this line, my left side goes numb. I start telling the doctors, hey, there's an issue here. Well, it goes 5 days. She ends up having a stroke, a massive stroke, and she's on a ventilator for 31 days. There's a lot of challenges. The doctor calls me and says, hey, your wife's taking a turn for the worse, and we don't believe she's going to make it, And I'm like,
Mike.
Okay, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
And so he said, well, I kind of went into that Air Force mode of, well, we're going to do something, right? Like,
right. So situation, response, plan.
He goes, I'm going to hand you to the surgeon real quick. And you can hear there's a lot of chaos. And the surgeon's like, we're in her ICU room. She's not going to make it to the OR. I've got to open her up right now. Do you want to know the risk? And I said, she goes, it doesn't matter. If I don't open her up, she's not going to make it. I said, okay.
Do what you got to do.
That was that. And I called the head of the hospital, who now that this is after they'd found out and they'd removed the line and put a stent in. And I said, you're not going to let me see my wife if she's not going to make it. So they let me come in. My daughters came, and that was the first time I got to see her, like a week later. But at some point, at like the 30-day point, they came and said, they had one of those meetings, and I was doing a Caring Bridge at the time, and I put some meetings are more important than others. And we had the whole, do you want to continue care and that kind of thing. And I got out of that. It was a Friday. And I said, I actually called President Bush's doctor because I had his information. He wasn't his doctor now, and he's retired. But so I called him, and we had a good he's a man of faith as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Tubb. And we had a long talk about it. He said, you don't have enough information right now,
okay,
to continue care. So we did. And then, like,
Mike, you were seeking wise counsel.
Yeah. So that Monday I said yes. And I think like a day or two later, she woke up, and it was a long road. This was in July. I think she finally came home November 11th, if I remember correctly, of that year.
2020?
Yes, of 2020. And that was a couple of stints in rehab and back in the hospital. And she came home, but she had limited use of the left side of her body. And since that day, we've had 24/7 care here at the house. So I'm still doing my job as a pilot for a Fortune 500 firm or family here in where I'm located. So it's one of those things where, as we've transitioned from the back of that theater to the front of the theater, the colonel was right. It's a long road, and you have to deal with these things. And I'm a Christian, obviously, and so my faith plays a big part. Like, I really don't know how to get through something like that without friends in your faith, people like Scott that you see have had something dealt to them, and they continue to thrive. And my wife is, she's one of those people. She's never gotten down, never questioned the Lord or anything about what happened.
As we wrap up here, I just want to ask you, amidst all the hardships in your life, and I know you're not a dramatic guy, you're not dramatizing those hardships, but it's reality. And amidst the season of hardships that you're navigating through, where are you finding joy or comfort in this year, in 2023?
Well, if I could, I'd like to. I heard this at Truth for Life once on a broadcast, and it stuck with me. Read a short poem and kind of expand on that.
I
briefly,
would love it. Please,
okay.
I would love it if you would. Go for it.
It's called my life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colors. He worketh steadily. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttle cease to fly, shall God unroll the canvas and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned. Tam is getting some more strength, so I don't think her journey's over. We're going to figure out what the Lord has for the rest of this weaving of our life pattern or whatever. The funny thing is, Skip, we talked a lot about Air Force One and stuff like that. At the end of my life, if you run into somebody that knew me, they're not going to say, hey, yeah, I remember him. That was that Air Force One pilot. They're going to say, I remember him. He was married to that awesome woman, Tammy. She was a superhero. That's what they're going to say, because she's the real hero in this story. She's an inspiration to me. She's an inspiration to the aides that she comes in contact with. I'd hope I could have that attitude if our situations were reversed, but I question that. So.
Yeah, you and me both. I'll tell you right now that as listeners hear her story and yours, you guys are both inspiring people. There's someone that's going to be encouraged by these stories. And I'm just honored and blessed to have had a chance to record it with you. Mike, thank you so much for coming on to The Main Thing, sharing your wisdom. There are no superheroes. I can't thank you enough, Mike.
Thank you, Skip, for having me, and wish you well in the future and your son. And I know it's coming close to graduation, so wish you both well.
Thank you, and so long for now.
So long.
Wow, that goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. I hope you're left wanting more. Sync up with us again next time on The Main Thing for 9 more minutes of wisdom. Let's be honest, it's not easy to ask for help or talk about money. Hey, it's Skip here, and many listeners like you continue to ask me, what do you need to continue to develop and build this show? Well, for context, it takes our team about 15 hours of work to produce each one of these packages of wisdom that we deliver to you in podcast form. Really, what we need as we enter season 3 of this show is funding to cover our costs. So in response, I formed a site on the Patreon platform where you can elect to become a supporting patron of the Main Thing podcast. Now, there are 3 levels you might consider, ranging from $6 to $27 per month. It's all safe and secure, and you can explore the options at patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. Now, how will we use the funding? Funds provided by you and other patrons will be used to defray the costs of production, promotion, and our recurring technology expenses each month. In short, you will be helping to keep this pipeline of wisdom flowing. Thanks.